Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time before alarms, coffee, or paid vacation, to the endlessly muddy sun-up to sundown rhythm of life as a medieval farmer. Picture this. The thatch roof above you is leaking again. You've got straw poking your back through a sackcloth mattress, and the rooster outside is somehow more punctual than your iPhone alarm ever was. The room is dark and smells faintly of smoke and sheep. You stir just as the faintest gray smudge appears in the eastern sky. No one talks yet. Your limbs are stiff, and the fire has long since died to embers. If you're lucky, your legs aren't numb from the kid who slept on them all night. If you're really lucky, the goat didn't eat your sock again. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch, but not too much. You don't want to disturb the precariously balanced ceiling beams. The smell of damp wood and sour milk welcomes you to another long day. The rooster crows again, louder this time. He's perched triumphantly on a barrel just outside, as if proud to remind you that medieval farming waits for no one. You roll off the low platform that counts as a bed. The floor is compacted earth, slightly uneven, slightly cold, and generously peppered with debris. Your tunic, which doubles as a blanket, is wrinkled and smells faintly of turnips, but it goes on anyway. Your bedroom is part of the one-room cottage you share with your family, and probably a chicken or two. Beds are rare luxuries, and privacy is a 14th century myth. The kids are still asleep, snoring into the hay. One of them is curled up with the family dog, who is arguably the cleanest of the lot. Outside, dawn creeps across the village. The landscape is still more shadow than substance. Fog clings to the fields, swirling like ghosts of yesterday's labor. You hear the lowing of cattle from the communal pen, the gentle splash of water sloshing in a wooden trough. Someone nearby is already rattling kindling. You grab your boots, or rather wooden-soled shoes with leather uppers, still damp from yesterday's misadventure with the stream, and stomp them on to soften the stiffness. Historians still argue whether most peasants even had consistent footwear or just padded around in rough socks until snow made that unbearable. There's no real alarm clock, just an internal rhythm fine-tuned to daylight and duty. Some say your body adjusts after a while. Others say it just stays tired until winter. As you step outside, the cold morning air hits your face like a damp cloth. You take a moment, just one, to look up. The stars are fading now, replaced by the soft blush of morning. Birds chatter in the hedgerow. Somewhere far off, a mill creaks awake. You nod a tired hello to your neighbor, who is also trudging across the yard, scratching his beard and looking like he lost a fight with his pillow. He lifts a hand in a silent wave and keeps walking. You both know what comes next. The rooster's job is done. The sun is rising, the village is stirring, and your long day as a medieval farmer has only just begun. There's a strange beauty in this moment, this quiet before the churn. You know what comes. Aching backs, stubborn oxen, and endless weeds. But for now, there's just the squish of wet ground beneath your feet, the steam of your breath in the chill air, and a dawn that belongs only to you and those who've learned to greet it every single day. You pass the barn, pat the old cow whose name changes weekly depending on her mood, and nod at the hens, who seem to judge you more each morning. One of them squawks dramatically. She does that. The day hasn't begun in earnest yet, but it will. You're already listing tasks in your head. Check the field boundary, fix that broken gate latch, help old Martin with his fence before the pigs escape again. The pigs are very good at escaping. You stop for a second, hand resting on the rough timber door of your neighbor's shed. The wood smells of years and rain. A squirrel chatters from the thatch above. You sigh. It's going to be a long one. Welcome to the first breath of your medieval day. You shuffle back inside, the sky now glowing a pale amber, and your first mission of the day is deceptively simple. Bring the hearth back to life. The hearth is everything. It's your kitchen, your heater, your light source, your drying rack, and the village gossip post if someone swings by. And right now it's a pile of reluctant, cold ash. You kneel in front of it, stretching fingers stiff from sleep, or maybe from yesterday's hoeing, and poke around for that elusive glowing coal. If you're lucky, one ember is still hanging on, barely warm. You blow on it gently like it's a secret. If not, you're stuck with flint and steel, striking sparks while muttering prayers under your breath. Eventually the straw catches, then the kindling, and finally the logs start to crackle. It's not glamorous, it's smoky, it's awkward, but it's warmth, and that's enough. Soon the tiny room smells like singed dust and dry twigs. Your breath fogs less. You hold your hands out to the flames like they're royalty. And now that the fire's going, it's time for the second order of business. Food. Or something vaguely food adjacent. Breakfast in medieval Europe, especially for peasants, was not a gourmet affair. You dunk a chunk of stale rye bread into a pot of yesterday's barley gruel, reheated with a splash of milk, assuming the cow cooperated this morning. If there's a bit of cheese left over from market day, it's a good day. And on rare occasions, a sliver of honeycomb from your cousin who keeps bees in old wine barrels is cause for celebration. One of the kids stirs, sneezes, and pulls the dog closer. You're used to the noise. Medieval homes are not built for silence. The beams groan, the chickens murmur. Someone always snores. You chew slowly, staring into the flames. Nearby, you hear the rhythmic thump of another neighbor pounding flax fiber, getting a head start on making thread. A baby wails in the distance, quickly muffled. The village is coming alive. Not all at once, but like dominoes tipping one by one. Once breakfast is in your stomach and your breath no longer comes out in clouds, you turn to the pile of tools propped near the hearth. A hoe, a sickle, a small rake, all slightly rusty, all yours. You wrap a belt around your waist, hang your pouch of seeds and dried apple slices, and tie your cloak tight against the wind. Outside, the world is less spooky now. Fog has retreated to the hedgerows. The sun is a dull coin in the sky, hiding behind gauzy clouds. There's a crispness to the air that will vanish by noon, but for now makes your cheeks tingle. You cross paths with your cousin, who's on dung duty today. More on that later. She waves, clutching a pitchfork and muttering about someone letting the goats eat the laundry again. As you walk down the muddy track toward your family's strips of field, you pass the church. The priest is already up, sweeping the steps, humming something that might be a hymn or might be complaints about his gout. He nods solemnly. You nod back. You pause briefly at the edge of your plot. Technically, it's your share of the manor's field, carved up into long, thin strips between you and every other soul in the village. Some strips are better than others. You're convinced the miller bribed someone for the good corner with less clay. Here, the soil is uneven and rocky. You stoop, run your fingers through it, feel the lingering dampness from last night's frost. Not ideal for planting today. Maybe the northern edge will be better. Tools in hand, you begin the slow, familiar ritual of checking your patch, clearing debris, prodding roots, assessing if the peas you stuck in last week have sprouted. One has. It's already been nibbled by something. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants understood crop rotation as systematically as we credit them today. But you and your neighbors know one thing for sure. If you plant the same thing too many years in a row, the earth gets mad and nothing grows. So you switch. Peas here, barley there, fallow strip in the middle if you can afford to let it rest. And of course, there's always superstition. Old Elsbeth swears if you scatter crushed eggshell under your turnips on the first Tuesday after the full moon, they'll grow sweeter. You tried it once. They tasted exactly the same, but the crows avoided them, so maybe it's not complete nonsense. You spend a few minutes reinforcing the low fence along your plot. More a symbolic line than any real barrier, but it keeps the kids from stomping through and occasionally deters a curious goat. Just as you finish, a familiar sound reaches your ears. The distant clank of the village bell. It's not for church. Not yet. This is the morning signal, Time to report to your obligations. The Lord Steward wants heads counted and tasks assigned. You sigh, wipe your hands on your tunic, and start the slow walk toward the manor yard. The mud sucks at your boots with every step, and a chicken races past you, chasing something that may or may not be edible. You stop briefly to retie your cloak, the breeze already hinting at a drizzle. It's going to be that kind of day. By the time you reach the manor yard, the sky is brighter, the fog nearly gone, and the mud is deeper. One step in, and you're rewarded with a satisfying squelch that tells you this pair of shoes may not last the season. Not that they were new this season to begin with. A handful of other villagers are already gathered, milling around like half-awake livestock. The steward, a man who always looks slightly offended that he has to interact with anyone who touches dirt, stands on a raised wooden platform, flipping through a little bundle of parchment like he's reading the Book of Judgment, which, in his head, he probably is. He starts calling names. You try to look interested, but not too interested. Volunteering makes you look suspiciously enthusiastic, which usually means you're either hiding something or hoping to curry favor. Neither is good, so you settle for competently bored. It's a delicate art. Your task today, as assigned by fate and the steward's randomly moist finger, is cart duty. Specifically, you're helping guide the manor's ox cart to haul manure out to the far barley fields. Classic. Everyone else groans in sympathy. You nod solemnly. It's not the worst job, but it's certainly not the driest. The oxen, when you find them, are chewing something thoughtfully and glaring at nothing in particular. You swear they plan their stubbornness. These aren't elegant bronze-horned beasts of a painting. They're shaggy, broad-shouldered, slow-moving cows who look like they've seen things and are absolutely not impressed. You've worked with them before, so you give them space and a little respect. The older one, Mudfoot, blinks at you slowly and lets out a sigh that sounds like an exhausted uncle. You loop the yoke over their necks, tighten the leather harnesses, and whisper something vaguely encouraging like, "Please don't embarrass me today." The cart creaks to life behind you, loaded with barrels already half full of manure. It's your job to steer the oxen, keep the wheels from getting caught on anything too big, and try to avoid a spill. The other part of your job? Dodging conversation with Hal, who's been assigned to assist, but mostly sings inappropriate ballads and offers unsolicited opinions on clouds. As you guide the cart toward the upper fields, you pass other villagers mid-task. One is cleaning out the animal pens, grumbling about his aching knees. Another is hauling water from the stream, sloshing it into wooden pails balanced on a yoke across her shoulders. A gaggle of kids trail behind, daring each other to touch a frog one of them has heroically captured. The road to the fields is more of a suggestion than a path. Ruts from old wheels run like trenches, some so deep that the cart tips just slightly to one side. You steady it instinctively, the oxen grunt. Hal starts whistling what might be a love song or might be about cheese. It's hard to tell with him. By the time you reach the field, the air has warmed a little, but the wind carries a fine mist off the distant hills. You squint toward the edge of the field where someone's scarecrow has been knocked down. Again. Probably the same local fox that's been stealing eggs and wants someone's boot. You grab a shovel and begin your work, scooping the composted waste into even piles across the soil. This isn't glamorous, but it's necessary. Fertilizer, after all, is life. Your ancestors didn't have modern nitrogen or chemical sprays, they had manure, lots of it. And a well-fertilized field is the difference between eating next winter or not. Historians still argue whether medieval farmers fully understood the chemical benefits of compost, or if they just knew from centuries of trial and error that the muckier the better. Either way, you follow the pattern laid out by generations before you. Spread it wide, let it settle, then turn it in when the soil is just right. Some say the very best fertilizer came from pigs fed on apples and barley mash. Others claim goose droppings, when dried properly, worked miracles. You're not picky. If it helps your barley grow tall and full, you'll haul it by hand, with a smile. A tired smile. But a smile nonetheless. As you work, Hal begins telling a story about the time he swore he saw a fairy near the mill pond, but it turned out to be a wet owl. He describes the moment with flair, complete with arm flaps and a mock owl screech that makes the oxen pause and consider revolt. You finish one barrel and move on to the next. The work is repetitive, but there's a rhythm to it. Lift, scatter, pat, repeat. Your arms ache. Your hands smell like a mixture of wet, leather, hay, and compost. And yet, there's a strange piece here. You pause for a moment, leaning on your shovel, watching a flock of crows wheel overhead. The sun is properly up now, a hazy yellow disk that makes the dew on the grass sparkle. Somewhere nearby, a toad croaks. The wind rustles the long grass at the edge of the field. It's easy to romanticize farming when you're not the one holding the shovel, but you remind yourself, this work means survival. It's not glamorous, but it's real. It's yours. You switch places with Hal, letting him take a turn. Not that his technique is much to speak of. He flings a shovel load sideways and nearly hits the wheel. You give him a look. He shrugs, unbothered, and goes back to humming. Eventually the barrels are empty. The cart is lighter, the oxen perk up slightly. You begin the slow walk back toward the manor, your boots now splattered, but your mind oddly clearer. The rhythm of work has settled into your bones. There's satisfaction in this kind of labor. Quiet, consistent, and wrapped in the scent of honest earth. The ox cart groans under its own emptiness as you steer it back through the rutted paths. Your hands numb, but your thoughts softening. The sun climbs higher. No longer just a smudge, but now glowing properly, casting long shadows that stretch across the village like lazy cats. Mudfoot snorts, perhaps sensing the journey home, or simply annoyed that no one brought him a snack. As you return the oxen to their post near the barn, you whisper your thanks. Not out loud, of course. That would be strange. You just give them a quiet nod and a quick pat, and Mudfoot responds with a wet sniff to your tunic sleeve. Fair trade. With the cart duty behind you, it's time to tackle your own strip of field. You trudge over, boots now doing their best impression of portable swamps. The earth clings like it wants you to stay, and for the next few hours you do. You reach for your seed pouch, hand sewn, slightly frayed, and begin sowing rye by hand. There's a technique to it, almost like casting spells. You walk in wide arcs, spreading the seed in an even fan. Too close together, and the plants fight each other. Too far apart, and weeds get bold. The breeze picks up, tugging at your cloak and your patience. A gust scatters a handful of seed into your boot. You shrug. Your boot's probably fertile. It's peaceful here, though. The village noise is muffled by distance. Just you, the crows, and the occasional plop of something mysterious in the nearby ditch. There's a cat watching you from the edge of the field. It's not your cat, and in medieval terms, no one really owns cats. They're tolerated, feared, fed scraps, and occasionally worshipped depending on the decade. This one has a notch in its ear and the look of a creature that has outlived several owners. It's probably here for the rats. You glance toward the granary, a small raised wooden structure with gaps between planks, and a ladder so steep even goats hesitate. That's where your seed grain was stored, hopefully well. Rats are a constant concern, and while the cat population helps, it's not a perfect solution. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants truly understood the connection between food storage and rat infestations, or whether they simply accepted that both were part of the great cosmic joke. Either way, you're grateful for the cats and their nightly patrols. You pause for a moment, straightening your back and massaging your shoulder. It's the kind of ache that doesn't go away. You've had it since the last frost. You probably will have it until the next one. You glance around, noting the slow, steady movement of other villagers across their fields. Everyone's spread out like stitches on a vast patchwork cloak. Just as you're about to return to sowing, you hear the strangled shriek of someone slipping in a puddle. You glance up. It's Thomas. Again. He stands dripping, holding up one very sad turnip like it betrayed him. You give a sympathetic wave and return to your work. As you sow, your thoughts drift. You wonder how the harvest will go this year. Last year was mediocre. Not a disaster, but not enough to barter for new boots either. If the rye takes well, you might have a little extra, maybe enough to trade for salt, or beeswax candles, or that carved comb you saw the traveling merchant selling, shaped like a bird. You remember a story told around the fire last winter. A neighboring village supposedly grew rye so large that one loaf of bread could feed 10 men. Of course, that same story claimed their priest could walk on water during Epiphany, so you took it with a grain of very expensive salt. After scattering another row of seed, you crouch to press your palm to the soil. It's cold, damp, and stubborn. You whisper a quick request to Saint Isidore, patron of farmers. You're not especially devout, but you figure it can't hurt. The sun is nearly at its zenith now, the light flattening shadows and painting everything in a sleepy golden hue. You remove your cloak and drape it over a fence post. The breeze cools your sweat. You stretch again, this time slower, savoring the relief that comes from a back no longer bent. There's a rustle at the hedgerow, and a small hedgehog emerges, nose twitching like it's looking for someone to narrate its memoir. You watch it toddle across the path, completely unaware of how close it came to a hoe blade. You take a few more steps, casting the last of your seed. Your pouch is empty. Your back is not, and your legs argue with every movement. But there's something deeply satisfying about seeing the field, blanketed in faint, hopeful lines. This crop, if all goes well, will be your bread in 6 months. It'll be your winter stew thickener, your payment to the Lord, your bargaining chip with the fishmonger. You pat the pouch, now limp and dusty, and look over your work with a small nod. Just then, a voice calls your name. You squint. It's your eldest, just a speck down the path, waving wildly. Lunchtime. Your stomach grumbles like it heard its name. The bell hasn't rung yet, but maybe they've started early. Either that or the goats escaped again. Either way, your feet turn toward home. The seed is sown, the field is set, and for now, that's enough. You make your way back toward the village, each step heavier than the last, as though your legs are conspiring with gravity to stage a protest. Your stomach, meanwhile, is staging its own demonstration, a low rumble with the subtlety of a drum line. The scent of wood smoke and boiling cabbage hits you halfway down the path, and suddenly you're walking just a little faster. The midday bell rings from the church tower, a hollow, slow toll that echoes across the fields and through the hedgerows. That bell means more than time. It means pause. It means food. It means, for a brief and sacred moment, you can stop being useful. You round the corner to your cottage, and there's your eldest, still waving like a tiny herald, now holding up a crust of bread as if to prove the meal is real. The other children are gathered around the hearth, faces flushed from being near the fire, fingers sticky with what may or may not have been turnip jam. You step inside, ducking beneath the low lintel beam you've banged your head on a dozen times this month. The interior is warm, smoky, and buzzing with quiet chaos. The stew pot simmers, something rooty and vaguely aromatic bubbling in the iron cauldron. You sit on the stool, your stool, which wobbles on one leg and has a splinter that found your thigh last week, and tear off a hunk of coarse barley bread. It's gritty like it always is, and you bite carefully, wary of the occasional pebble that escaped the millstone. Chewing slowly, you accept the minor dental gamble in exchange for calories. Lunch is simple. Barley bread, boiled leeks, a bit of yesterday's stew reheated with water to stretch it. There's a knob of cheese that's sharper than you remember, and a tiny mug of small beer, barely alcoholic, but enough to clean the palate and dull the ache behind your eyes. You sip it slowly. It's warm, it's earthy, it's functional. The room is alive with conversation. Your younger son proudly explains how he chased off a goose with a spoon. One of the twins is attempting to feed a bit of bread to the house cat, who looks deeply offended. You chuckle and lean back, letting the warmth from the hearth soak into your sore back. You exchange a few words with your partner about the morning. They've been mending clothes and cleaning the inside of the chimney. Because even soot deserves seasonal attention, apparently. You mention the field, the rye, and how Hal nearly upended the entire barrel into the brook. Again, lunch is a communal act, even if the food is humble. There's comfort in eating together in shared silence and the occasional off-color joke about the miller's suspiciously plump pigs. You all know what comes next. Work doesn't stop just because the stew did. One of the children tries to sneak a second slice of bread and is met with a gentle swat. You glance outside. Sun's still high, shadows short. Time to return. As you step back into the daylight, you notice the wind has shifted slightly. It's warmer now, but a storm could be hiding behind the horizon. You squint at the sky, mutter a guess, and decide you've got a few hours before you need to worry. Or not worry. Worrying doesn't change the weather. You make your way across the common yard and past the well, where two women are deep in a discussion about taxes on turnips. One insists the Lord is adding a new levy. The other claims it's just gossip from the merchant's wife, who once mistook a parsnip for a demon. You nod politely and keep walking. You'll find out soon enough, probably from the steward, probably with that same disapproving frown. Taxes are a mystery in a way. You grow things. You give a portion to the Lord. Then there are tithes to the church, dues to the guild, if you're lucky enough to be part of one, and occasional gifts for the local Reeves' birthday. All expected, all unavoidable. Historians still argue about how crushing medieval tax burdens really were. Some say they were harsh but predictable. Others argue that a bad harvest could spiral a family into years of debt. You don't need a historian to tell you how it feels when the steward shows up with a parchment scroll and a tone like thunder. Back in the field, you settle into the rhythm of the afternoon. You start with a patch of thistles that have decided to throw a rebellion. Their roots grip like they own the place, and each one yanked feels like a personal victory. Your hands sting, your knees ache. You mutter threats at a particularly stubborn clump, then laugh when it gives way suddenly and nearly throws you backward. While you weed, you hum a tune. Something old without words. A melody passed down from someone who probably sang it to the same sky, over the same soil. Music is memory, and in moments like this, it keeps your hands moving even when your energy starts to fade. You pause to check the stitches on your tunic sleeve, tugging the thread tighter where it's frayed. Everything gets patched. Shirts, shoes, relationships. There's an art to mending that you didn't appreciate when you were younger. Now it's second nature. Fix it or do without. You sigh, tie the last knot, and get back to pulling weeds. A cart rumbles past in the distance, the driver half asleep on the reins. Someone nearby shouts about geese in the garden again. The village, like your muscles, never really stops moving. You glance up at the sun, now slightly to the west, casting a golden light across the rows of soil. There's still more to do. Always more. But for now, the rhythm is steady, the air is warm, and the weeds, at least, are losing the battle. Afternoons in the fields settle into a kind of trance. You're still weeding, still pulling, still muttering things under your breath that would offend a priest if he heard them, but the pace slows. The air shifts, the breeze softens. It's the part of the day where your thoughts are allowed to wander just a little. You finish one row, straighten up, and let out a groan that echoes through your spine like an old wooden door. You place your hands on your hips, look down at your work, and nod. It's not perfect, but the thistles are on the defensive. The rake is next, its wooden tines worn smooth from years of use, its handle patched with twine where it cracked during last year's frost. You run it through the dirt with a rhythmic sweep. Back and forth, back and forth. A flock of birds follows you, pecking eagerly at whatever your efforts unearth. They're freeloaders, but polite ones. You hear someone calling nearby, Marjorie from 2 fields down. She's asking if anyone's seen her lad, who's supposed to be chasing crows but is most likely asleep under a hedge. You yell back that you haven't, and she mutters something about boys being as useful as a holy bucket. Weeding gives way to mending. You pull a small bundle from your belt, a linen cloth containing your needle, some rough thread, and a tiny thimble carved from bone. Your overshirt tore when you reached too far earlier. Sitting on a stump, you stitch by feel more than sight, your fingers moving with a practiced clumsiness. This is your only good shirt, which is saying something since it has 3 colors of patch and a suspicious smell you've never been able to place. You joke sometimes that it'll one day hold itself together through sheer stubbornness, like you. The act of mending is quiet, meditative. Your hands work while your mind goes elsewhere, thinking about the harvest fair in a few months, about whether the bees survived the winter in the old log hive, about whether it's finally time to take that loose tooth out with a string and a door, or maybe just leave it. Medieval dentistry isn't exactly renowned. Historians still discuss how often peasants like you repaired clothing versus remaking it entirely. Evidence suggests most garments were used until they disintegrated, at which point the scraps became stuffing for pillows or emergency patches for livestock harnesses. You believe it. You've patched a chicken's foot with a sleeve before. It worked surprisingly well. You rise again, brushing the dust from your knees, and return to the furrows, checking seedlings, plucking errant weeds, talking to yourself now and then. Everyone does. It's not madness, it's just company. Someone nearby sneezes loud enough to startle the crows. Probably old Wymond. He insists on working shirtless even when it's barely spring. Claims the sun keeps his joints loose. You've never noticed a difference, but he does glow slightly red all year. You catch yourself yawning, which feels absurd. There's still much to do, and no one sleeps in the fields, unless you count little Hugh, who once nodded off during planting season and woke up with a vole in his hood. The sounds of the village fade slightly here. Fewer children, fewer animals, more birdsong, and the whisper of wind through barley that's only just beginning to sprout. You wonder, as you often do, what it might be like to visit another village, or even the town if you had shoes nice enough for the trip. You've heard stories of street performers, open markets, and bread that isn't mostly oat husks and resentment. Still, there's a charm to your little patch of land, even if it tries to kill your back daily. You know every stone by name, every tree's lean, every molehill that wasn't there yesterday. It's not much, but it's yours. Or as much yours as land ever is when a lord technically owns it. The village children come running past, shouting about a goose chase. You sigh. Not again. You set down your tools and follow the shrieks to the hedgerow, where sure enough, 3 kids are flailing while a very irate goose holds court. You clap your hands, shoo it off, and escort the children back with a lecture about respecting fowl boundaries. One of them offers you a wildflower as thanks. You take it, tuck it behind your ear, and return to your task. The flower smells faintly of soil and something sharp. Marjorie would say it's an omen. You decide it's just a flower. As the sun begins its slow drift toward the horizon, the light turns golden, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across the fields like the fingers of time itself. You pause. You breathe. The moment lingers. Then, of course, your stomach growls again. You glance at the sky and judge by its color. Maybe 2 more hours of light. Enough time to finish the last row. Enough time to check on the fence where the goats got through last week. Enough time to regret agreeing to help the reeve move stones later. You get back to work, quietly, steadily. Weeds still grow. Shirts still rip. But here you are, 1 hand in the soil, 1 foot in the fading sun, doing what farmers have done for centuries, with a muttered curse, a crooked smile, and hope buried just beneath the topsoil. The light shifts ever so slightly, and you feel it before you see it. The sun hangs lower now, more amber than gold, casting the village in a warm, drowsy glow. It's the kind of light that makes everything look softer, less muddy, less frayed, less like it's plotting to give you splinters. You set your tools aside and decide to do a bit of fence patching before the chickens get any wild ideas about escape. The fence along the back path has been sagging since winter, and last week a particularly bold rooster discovered it could squeeze through the gap and terrorize the shoemaker's cat. Again. You trudge over, pulling a small bundle of twine and a few wooden pegs from your belt pouch. The fence is made of stakes and woven branches. Wattle, as it's called. It's decent enough for keeping in goats, unless the goats are especially ambitious. Yours are. You prop a knee against the sagging section and begin rewinding the twine, threading it around the slats, cinching it tight. The knot work is more sailor than farmer, taught to you by your uncle who spent 2 seasons crewing a merchant boat before deciding that open water was just a wetter version of servitude. As you work, you hear a low muttering behind you. It's old Theobald, wandering past with a basket of eggs and his usual complaints about the price of salt and the unfairly suspicious nature of his hens. He doesn't stop to help, but he does stop to supervise, offering helpful comments like, "That knot's too loose," and "In my day we used proper rope, not string made from wishful thinking." You nod politely. You've learned that arguing only encourages him. He wanders off, grumbling about ducks, and you finish the repair in peace. Just as you hammer in the last peg, you hear a squelch and a curse. Someone stepped into the ditch. You turn and see Emlyn, who raises a fist at the puddle as though it personally betrayed her. You wave in sympathy. She waves back with one muddy boot in her hand. With the fence patched, you turn your attention to a more delicate task, checking the herb patch behind your cottage. It's tiny, just a few square feet, but it holds treasures. A bit of sage, some thyme, a struggling row of leeks, and your pride and joy. A tiny, stubborn rosemary bush that refuses to die no matter how many goats try to eat it. You kneel, picking at the weeds trying to edge in. The soil here is drier, warmer. You inhale the sharp scent of the herbs and allow yourself a moment to just be. The rosemary tickles your fingers, and you think maybe you'll cut a few sprigs for supper. If nothing else, it makes turnips smell less like wet regret. You glance over to where the village path curves toward the manor. A small commotion is underway. Someone shouting about spilled milk, a pig escaping its pen, and possibly a dispute over whether someone's donkey has been stealing firewood. Normal afternoon fare. The goats are bleeding again. You sigh. Time for a head count. You find them at the edge of the commons, eyeing the baker's cart. You clap your hands, and 2 of them come trotting back. The third stares at you, unmoving, chewing slowly like it's weighing your authority against its desire for stale bread. Eventually it relents. You usher them home, muttering promises of stew if they pull another stunt tomorrow. Historians still argue how much livestock was kept free-range in peasant villages versus tethered. Your experience suggests free-range but under surveillance. Goats in particular are known to operate like small, wool-covered anarchists. Back in your yard, you begin repairing a chicken coop latch that's gone wobbly. A piece of bone, a nail, and some determination later, it clicks back into place. You test it twice. Still not perfect, but good enough to keep the hens in, or at least mildly inconvenienced. You look around, tools propped near the door, stacks of firewood dwindling already, a wooden stool drying in the sun, having been soaked by last night's rain. Everything needs something. Everything is halfway to needing something else. You reach for your last task of the afternoon, fetching water. You grab your pail and make the short walk to the village well, where a few others are already queued up. There's chatter, nothing dramatic. Someone's cousin got a fever. The miller's boy is being sent to market. A traveling peddler passed through with trinkets and gossip. The usual blend of news and nonsense. When it's your turn, you lower the bucket into the dark, cool depths. The rope creaks, water sloshes. The pail comes back up heavy, dripping, and you brace your knees to haul it over the lip of the stone well. You pour it into your jug, nod a thanks, and start the walk back. Arms straining, steps careful, balance wobbling just slightly. You pass the church again, where the priest is now chatting with a merchant on horseback. Coins change hands. You don't ask. Back at the cottage, you set the water down beside the hearth. The children are sitting near the fire, playing a game involving pebbles and loud accusations of cheating. You smile, you'll let them sort it out. You sit on the stoop for a moment, wiping your brow with the sleeve. The sun is slanting now, its rays longer, softer. The day's light is folding inward. Even as the quiet settles in, the village hums. You can hear it in the cluck of chickens, the creak of cartwheels, the murmur of prayers, and the distant laughter of someone who's had a little too much ale, a little too early. Your hands are rough. Your shirt is patched. Your goats are slightly insubordinate. And yet, in this golden pause, it all feels exactly as it should. You don't need to check the sun to know what time it is. The scent gives it away. That unmistakable earthy perfume drifting across the commons isn't stew or bread or anything remotely edible. It's manure, again. Only this time, it's not for hauling, it's for measuring. That's right. You've been roped into the glamorous, underappreciated role of participating in what the locals call the dung watch. You sigh, dust your hands, and grab a flat stick. The tool of the trade, apparently. You follow the scent trail down a narrow path to where the cows were let out earlier. The pasture is peppered with fresh evidence of their digestive success. Dung watch sounds absurd, and honestly, it is absurd. But it's a genuine part of rural life. You're here to assess the quality of cow manure. How rich, how fibrous, how ready it is to be turned into tomorrow's fertilizer. Too fresh and it burns the crops. Too old and it loses its magic. You bend down, prod a pat gently with your stick, and immediately wish you hadn't. You glance around to make sure no one's watching your shame. Nearby, a crow caws judgmentally from a fence post. Is this necessary? Yes. Is it dignified? Absolutely not. Still, as strange as it sounds, this is valuable work. Medieval farmers understood the power of compost. Even if you don't have words like nitrogen and aerobic decomposition in your vocabulary, you know good dung from bad. It's something of a sixth sense, a nose thing mostly. You make notes in your head. The northern pen's output is almost dry enough to spread. The patch by the elder tree is too fresh. That one's steaming. You step carefully, marking a few piles with stakes tied with straw. Someone will return tomorrow to shovel and spread. You hope it's not you. Historians still argue whether these sorts of practices were common across Europe or more specific to certain regions. There are records of complex composting systems in monasteries and manor estates, but for peasants like you, it's more hands-on, or rather feet near. You move from pile to pile like a slow-motion detective, inspecting textures, gauging color, trying not to think too hard about your life choices. The sun is low now, casting long streaks of pink and gold through the haze. The cows watch you lazily from under a nearby tree, chewing cud like they've got better things to do. One of the piles is suspiciously large, and you raise an eyebrow. That's not just cow. You glance around. No horses in sight. You make a mental note to bring it up with someone tomorrow. Maybe the steward. Or maybe just quietly ignore it and hope for rain. With the last assessment done, you clean your stick in a shallow puddle, then immediately feel bad for the puddle. You tuck it behind the fence for the next unlucky volunteer, and wash your hands with a bit of gritty ash soap by the trough. Your skin feels like bark, but at least it smells less like pasture now. You head back toward your cottage, stepping around a small group of children building a tiny mud fort near the well. They're laughing, arguing about whether the tower should have a moat. You smile and tell them it needs a drawbridge too. One of them salutes you. At your door, the goats are back, one perched atop a log pile surveying its domain. You shoo them gently toward the pen. They resist with the stubbornness of royalty, but eventually concede. The air smells different now. Still tinged with manure, yes, but also smoke and evening bread. Somewhere down the lane, someone is baking, probably Marjorie. She always bakes at dusk. She claims the ghosts of her ancestors guide her kneading arm at this hour. You've never argued. You enter your cottage again. It's warmer now, fire gently crackling, casting shadows on the timbered walls. Your eldest is turning a spit over the hearth. Tonight's meal is a small hare caught in a snare, bulked up with turnips, carrots, and the last of the barley mash. It smells better than it looks, but it always does. You sit down, stretch your legs, and marvel at how much heavier your body feels by the end of the day. Not sore exactly, just used. Like a favorite chair or a well-worn boot. Your partner pours you a mug of ale, not the strong stuff, just the low brew kind made from leftover mash and patience. It's warm, a little flat, comforting. The family gathers near the hearth, passing the stew bowl, tearing bits of bread, dipping, chewing. The room is filled with small sounds, slurps, quiet talk, the crackle of logs, someone's belly gurgling hopefully. One of the little ones asks what you did today. You pause, then say, "I watched cow dung for an hour." They blink, nod slowly, and return to their stew. No follow-up questions. After the meal, someone mentions that Brother Alric is visiting next week. The priest says he has relics. You wonder what kind. Shards of saints' bones. Pieces of wood from the true cross that seem to multiply across Europe? Whatever it is, it'll draw a crowd, and the baker's wife will make special cakes. Outside, the last light fades from the sky. You step out for a moment, the cool breeze brushing your cheeks. The moon rises, a pale coin above the thatched rooftops. A dog barks in the distance, the wind rustles the grass. Somewhere, an owl calls softly from the woods. You look out at the fields. Your fields. They stretch into shadow now, rows of newly planted rye hidden under dusk's blanket. You think of the seed buried in the soil, of the work yet to come, and the strange, quiet rhythm of life that you've known for as long as you can remember. You head back inside. Tomorrow is waiting, but for tonight, the chores are done. The wind picks up a little as the sun slips behind the low hills, painting the horizon in streaks of lavender and orange. It's that golden moment when the day exhales, when even the goats quiet down, the chickens stop clucking, and the village holds its breath before the dark. You're just about to pull the shutters closed when a strange sound echoes down the lane. Hooves. You peek around the doorframe and sure enough, a rider approaches. Two, actually. One in a modest monk's robe, the other dressed in finer clothes with a wax-sealed pouch bouncing at his belt. It's the visiting monk from the nearby priory and, less welcomed, the manor's tax collector. The monk is smiling, of course, always smiling. He blesses a child who waves from the fence and accepts a handful of withering apples from a hopeful widow. He stops to admire someone's herb patch. You like the monk. He smells like beeswax and knows how to listen. The tax collector, on the other hand, smells like damp velvet and obligation. His arrival always brings tension. He rides with his shoulders back, a purse jingling at his side, a scroll tucked under one arm. You recognize the scroll. That's the tally of tithes, fines, and dues owed by every household in the village, including yours. The monk dismounts and heads toward the church. The tax collector, Hugh his name is, though no one uses it with affection, rides straight to the steward's house. You see him hand over the scroll, point at something on the parchment, and shake his head disapprovingly. Classic Hugh. Back inside, you and your family exchange glances. No words are needed. Everyone feels it, the flicker of uncertainty. You're up to date, you think? Probably, but fines are slippery, and the steward once fined someone for excessive chimney smoke. You keep your own fire just smoky enough to feel innocent. Historians still debate how rigid or flexible local tax systems were. Some suggest that collectors often abused their position, squeezing coin from peasants under vague pretenses. Others argue the system, though harsh, had structure and predictability. You're not sure. All you know is Hugh arrives with a list and he never leaves with fewer names than he started with. To distract yourself, you check the ledger you keep tucked into a clay jar. It's not fancy, just lines scratched on wood or marked with symbols. But you know what each line means. 2 hens sold at market. 1 bucket of oats traded for wax. A broken rake repaired for a neighbor's loaf of rye bread. You trace your finger along the recent entries, reassuring yourself that nothing has been missed. Still, you toss a few more coppers into the small chest hidden under the hearthstones, just in case. Later, as twilight deepens, the monk makes his rounds. He knocks softly at your door, and you open it with a respectful nod. He steps inside, eyes scanning the room with warmth, not judgment. He blesses the hearth, compliments the smell of stew, and accepts a small piece of bread from your youngest, who offers it with both hands like a sacred rite. The monk sits for a moment, sipping a bit of the small beer you offer him. He speaks gently about the cycle of seasons, about St. Cuthbert's feast day, about a story he heard of a village that saw wheat sprout in winter. You all know it's nonsense, but it's a soothing kind of nonsense, the kind that makes hard days easier. Then he leaves, cloak fluttering in the cool air, off to the next house where his smile and stories are just as welcome. Meanwhile, the tax collector remains unseen, his presence lingering like the scent of boiled cabbage. You'll know tomorrow what he left behind, whether it's new levies or new rumors. You shut the door firmly and pull the shutters closed, latching them with a peg carved from oak. The night is now fully here, and the outside world with its paperwork and politics can wait. Supper is finished. Bellies are full, more or less. The children settle near the hearth, chasing the last licks of warmth from the fire. Someone tells a riddle. Someone else guesses wildly. Laughter bubbles up. You feel the tension of the day ease. In the corner, your partner mends a sock, humming a tune older than memory. The needle flashes in the firelight. You lean back against the wall, arms crossed, eyes half closed, listening to the rhythms of your home. These are the moments that aren't taxed. Not yet. Outside, you hear the rustle of a cartwheel, the creak of leather, the clip-clop of hooves fading into the distance. Hugh is leaving, back toward the manor house, or perhaps the next village on his list. You whisper a short prayer, not for him, but for your ledger's accuracy. You glance at the corner shelf where a small carved figure of Saint Isidore stands in shadow. His expression is blank, but you imagine he approves of your compost handling today. The fire settles into a low, comfortable crackle. The children are half asleep, heads resting on woven mats. One of them drools slightly on the dog, who doesn't seem to mind. The night deepens, and you light a small beeswax candle to give the room a softer glow. It flickers, dances, settles. Whatever the tax news may be, whatever rumors the monk carried, they can all wait until dawn. For now, your home is quiet. Your family is near. The hearth is warm, and the door is shut. Rain. Or at least the threat of it. You wake sometime after midnight to that familiar thrum above your head. Not a full storm, just a scattered, indecisive drizzle tapping the thatch roof like it's knocking to ask permission. It leaks in 2 places. One near the hearth, where you've placed a crock to catch drips, and the other right above your foot. You wiggle your toes, now mildly damp, and sigh. It's a comforting kind of annoyance. One that says, yes, you're alive, yes, you're poor, and yes, your roof is always 2 weeks from being a boat. By morning, the world outside is a different shade of brown. The fields gleam with wet promise. The lanes have turned to slush. The air is heavy with the scent of moss, old wood, and sheep. Weather in your world is more than idle conversation, it's law. It decides everything: food, comfort, health, survival. And today, the sky has opinions. You step outside to assess the situation. Your boots make a noise like overcooked porridge as you sink slightly into the mud. The fog is back, thicker than yesterday, curling low across the fields, veiling everything in soft dampness. You can barely see the manor tower, usually visible just beyond the trees. This morning, it's been swallowed. One of the hens squawks in protest from a puddle. The goats look scandalized. The dog refuses to leave the stoop. You lift your eyes to the clouds, trying to guess what they're planning. It's a skill passed down through generations of furrowed brows and muttered superstitions. Gray, but not too dark? Rain all day, blue at the edges? Might clear by supper. Smells like worms? Bring in the laundry. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had organized meteorological knowledge, or if it was all folk wisdom passed down in rhyme and rumor. You'd say it's both. You've got a neighbor who swears she can smell lightning before it strikes, and she's only been wrong twice. Rain means adjustments. The rye you sowed yesterday will love it. The barley field, though, might flood near the ditch. You make a mental note to dig a new trench. If you wait, the water will pool, the roots will rot, and the miller will laugh at your swamp oats. No one needs that kind of shame. You duck back inside, grab your hoe and spade, and tie a worn piece of linen over your shoulders like a cape. It doesn't keep you dry, but it makes you feel like you're trying. Outside, the drizzle picks up. You trudge toward the field, cloak clinging to your legs, water trickling down your spine like a wet finger. The mud tugs at every step. The trench you started last year is still mostly intact. You begin to widen it, digging slowly, methodically, the spade squelching with each lift. It's thankless work, but there's something honest about it. Something in the rhythm, the repetition. The rain falls harder for a bit. You pause under a crooked tree, wiping your face with your sleeve, and listen. The entire world sounds like a lullaby. Soft drips, distant bleats, the occasional splash of someone tripping over a puddle they should have known was there. You remember a saying the old Reeve taught you. Rain before noon is silver. Rain after noon is sorrow. You're not sure what it means, but it sounds wise, and sometimes that's all that matters. The sky begins to brighten. Not dry up, mind you, just lighten slightly, like it's apologizing for the inconvenience. You finish your trench, scrape the mud off your boots with a flat stone, and watch the water begin to flow toward the ditch. It's not perfect, it never is. But it's better. You wander past the communal well, where someone's covered it with a board to keep the rain out. Nearby, a group of children are attempting to build a boat out of a half-barrel in wishful thinking. You smile, shake your head, and tell them to name it the Soggy Chicken. They love it. By mid-morning, the rain eases. The air smells sharp. Wet wood, cold iron, green things remembering how to grow. The sun peeks through the clouds for a single hopeful moment, like a toddler shyly looking around a corner. You head to the hedgerow to check on your woven traps. You set them yesterday, hoping to catch a rabbit, or, less glamorously, a particularly bold rat that's been stealing dried apples. The first trap is empty. The second has sprung, but its contents escaped, leaving behind only a single tuft of fur and a deeply personal insult in the form of claw marks. The third trap holds something, a hare. Not large, but enough to stretch the stew tonight. You say a quiet thanks, loosen the snare gently, and place the animal in your pouch. Tonight will be a warm one. On your way home, you spot the steward standing with a group of villagers holding up another scroll. Rain or no, business doesn't pause. He's talking about pasture rotations, something about shared grazing privileges, and, judging by the groans, another round of manure quotas. You nod politely as you pass. You'll hear the details at supper, or tomorrow. Or never, if you're lucky. At your door, you shed your cloak, hang it near the fire to steam dry, and pull your boots off with a grimace. One sock is wetter than the other. You don't ask why. Inside, your youngest is poking at a lump of dough with intense focus. Your partner is preparing herbs, mixing something in a small mortar, humming low. The house smells of thyme, rosemary, and survival. You sit down, stretch your back, and feel a raindrop roll from your temple to your chin. You flick it away, smile faintly, and let the warmth of the hearth soak into your bones. Outside, the rain may start again. It probably will. But for now, the sky is quiet. The fields are fed, and the day, however soggy, has not been wasted. Evening comes with more haste than you expect. The rain has stopped, leaving everything glistening: stone, soil, even the sheep, who somehow managed to look smugly clean after rolling in mud all day. The clouds part slightly, revealing a bruised sky where streaks of orange and mauve drift lazily behind the thatched roofs. This time of day is known as the sunset rush. It's not an official title, but it might as well be. Everyone's scrambling to get things done before full dark sets in, and the only light comes from flickering tallow candles in your slightly judgmental hearth. Your first task? Collecting your tools. No one leaves anything out overnight. Tools are valuable. Wood takes time, iron takes coin, and replacing a lost sickle because a neighbor's pig decided it was a chew toy is the sort of misfortune that gets you laughed at for months. You gather your hoe, your rake, your patched basket with the unraveling handle, and carry it all in one arm like a professional juggler of humble burdens. As you cross the field, you hear the creak of another cart. Not Hugh this time. It's just old Thomas hauling a fresh batch of kindling into the village. You wave and he nods, though it's hard to tell if it's a greeting or his neck cracking again. Your next job is the chickens. Chickens may seem like low-maintenance animals. This is a lie. Chickens are tiny, feathery chaos engines who regard fences as friendly suggestions and sleep as a social experiment. You head to the coop, clucking softly under your breath to let them know you're coming. You once surprised them and regretted it for a week. The hens are mostly where they should be, roosting on crooked sticks inside the coop, murmuring softly. You do a quick head count. 7 hens, 1 aggressively loud rooster, and... is that a duck? You squint. That's definitely a duck. You don't own a duck. You open the gate, shoo it out, and it waddles away with 0 explanation. You shrug. Someone's dinner will be slightly more mysterious tonight. You shut the coop door, secure it with the iron latch you installed yourself. A proud upgrade from the loop of fraying twine that used to do the job. You pat the roof gently, it leaks less now. From the far side of the commons, you hear someone shouting about a missing goat. Again. You mutter a prayer to St. Bridget, patron of livestock, and promise an offering of wildflowers if she keeps your goats inside tonight. As the last light of the day slides across the ground like spilled honey, you do a final walkthrough of your plot. You don't have to, but you do it anyway. The furrows are still wet from the rain, the rye seeds invisible beneath the mud, and the scarecrow, well, he's listing a bit to the left but still standing. You tip your hat at him. Your neighbor Marjorie joins you at the fence. She's chewing something green, possibly edible, and hands you a small bunch of dried nettles wrapped in cloth. For the cough, she says, nodding at your eldest, who's been sniffling since last week. You thank her sincerely. She shrugs. If it doesn't help the child, it'll keep the mice out of your boots. The two of you stand in silence for a moment, watching the last rays disappear behind the trees. She starts talking about the old days again, about how her grandfather swore foxes could steal voices if you whistled at night. You humor her. It's good to let people talk, especially when they believe in things too odd to argue with. You part ways, and she disappears into the mist like an unusually chatty ghost. You head home, boots squelching, shoulders tired but upright. There's something fulfilling about crossing the threshold after a day like this. Mud-streaked, sun-warmed, damp in every joint, but undeniably accomplished. Inside, your family has already begun their preparations for sleep. The hearth glows steadily, giving the whole room that dreamy flicker that turns everything it touches into a memory. The stew pot has been rinsed and refilled with water for tomorrow. The children are laying out their mats, arguing over who gets the corner near the fire. You assign it to the dog. That usually solves the dispute. But there's still one more task before rest, hiding the tools. You pull up the corner of the floorboard behind the hearth, revealing the hollow where you keep your spade, your best knife, and the extra belt buckle that no one's supposed to know you have. Theft isn't common, but it happens. And no one wants to be the one explaining to the steward that their scythe simply walked off. Especially not during harvest. Once your gear is stashed, you place a small rock over the floorboard. It's not exactly a high-tech alarm system, but you'll hear it shift if someone tries to get clever. You step outside one last time, taking in the final breath of evening air. The breeze is cooler now, gentler. Crickets chirp from the tall grass. A lantern glows faintly in the church window, where the priest is likely reading scripture or, more likely, making notes on whose chickens keep trespassing in his herb garden. You lean against the doorway, arms folded, and smile. The night is coming. You've done your work, weathered the rain, herded the chickens, mended the fence, and dodged taxes for another day. The rooster is already asleep, perched with one eye open like he's still holding a grudge from this morning's early wake-up. You whisper goodnight to the sky, though you don't expect an answer. The stars begin to emerge, one by one. Some say they're the souls of the blessed. Others say they're holes poked in the heavens to let the light through. Either way, they shine. You step inside, latch the door, and exhale the whole day in one long breath. Some days are for labor, others are for ritual. And some, if the calendar, the church, and the weather all agree, are for feast days and fallow fields. Today, by some stroke of divine alignment, is one of those rare reprieves. A day of rest, or at least a gentler rhythm. The steward made the announcement 2 evenings ago, declaring a break from fieldwork so the land could breathe and the villagers could give thanks. Or possibly so, the manor could host visiting relatives in peace without background hoeing noises. You wake to the scent of something better than stew. Pastries. Or, well, something that dares to pretend to be a pastry. You sit up, nose twitching, trying to identify the smell. Honey, maybe? Turnips? Possibly both. You don't question it. The sun filters through the thatch in soft stripes. It's mid-morning and no one's shouting yet. That alone is a gift. You sit up slower than usual, stretching each limb with the smug luxury of someone who doesn't have to chase geese immediately. Even the goat looks mildly confused that you're not heading out with a spade. After a small breakfast, bread with a smear of something sweet and confusing, you wash at the trough and pull on your best tunic. Which is to say, the one without mud stains visible from a distance. It's stiff in the sleeves and smells like the chest it was kept in. Old wood and crushed mint leaves. Feast days mean more than food. They mean music, stories, games, and that rarest of things. Idle time. You head toward the village square, where activity is already buzzing. Someone's set up a trestle table with boiled eggs and suspicious pies. Children are running in tight circles, some playing a game with sticks and hoops that seems more exhausting than any chore. The church bells ring, not for work, not for mass, just for celebration. A strange sound when it's not followed by orders or tax announcements. Near the well, 2 old men are arguing about whether St. Crispin ever actually wore shoes. You overhear bits of debate, and that's why his left foot never rotted. You're thinking of St. Lawrence. He was grilled, not barefoot. You pass them with a polite nod, trying not to laugh. Someone hands you a piece of sweetbread. Dense, slightly gritty, but speckled with dried apple. You thank them, nibble it slowly, and make a mental note to ask for the recipe. Not that you bake, but maybe your partner will try if you praise the bread convincingly enough. Down the path, a group is gathering near the green for a game of bottle cap toss. No bottles are involved, just stones and a carved wooden token thrown at a ring of goose feathers. The winner usually gets bragging rights and, if they're lucky, a pickled egg. You join the circle, take your turn. Your stone lands wide. Someone boos. You bow dramatically and feign heartbreak. A few chuckles ripple through the crowd. It's moments like this that make you feel part of something bigger than labor. Not just a name on the tax roll or a set of calloused hands in a field, but a soul with time to spare. a participant in the strange, joyful rhythm of village life. Historians still debate how frequent and fun medieval feast days truly were. Some argue they were rare and somber, mostly religious in tone. Others suggest that in many villages they were lively affairs, a vital pressure valve for the constant strain of peasant life. You're inclined to believe the latter. After all, no one puts this much effort into pickling eggs for solemnity. The afternoon stretches out with more games: sack races, mock sword duels with broomsticks, and storytelling contests. You find yourself on a log near the fire pit, listening to your cousin describe how a giant eel once tried to marry her grandmother. It's not believable, but it's entertaining. Then come the songs, old wandering tunes that everyone knows halfway. You hum along, tapping your foot. Someone pulls out a drum, more a pot lid really, and keeps rhythm while the children dance with wild abandon. You sit back, arms behind you in the grass, and let the sun warm your face. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, you feel completely still. A gentle breeze lifts the smell of wildflowers from the hedgerow. Bees drift lazily through the air, unbothered by the noise. A chicken hops onto your foot. You let it. As evening draws closer, the energy softens. Someone brings out a bundle of reeds and begins weaving small crowns for the children. One of the little ones makes you one too. You wear it without protest. Why not? Food is shared again near dusk. Turnip and herb dumplings, boiled eggs, and a cake so dense it could stop a thief if thrown properly. It's delicious. You catch yourself laughing more than once. Not just polite chuckles, but full head-thrown-back laughter. It feels unfamiliar, wonderful. You help carry firewood to the center and light the bonfire just as the sun begins to dip. Flames dance, throwing golden light on tired, smiling faces. Someone starts a slow ballad. Others join in. Your voice cracks, but you sing anyway. The stars blink awake above. Children yawn and curl up beside their parents. Old folks nod off mid-sentence, heads bobbing like apples in cider. You watch the fire a while longer, letting its heat soak into your skin. Its glow lull you toward sleep. Not quite yet, but soon. Fallow days are rare, but they remind you why you work so hard the other 6. The fire is still smoldering in the square when you rise the next morning. Smoke coils lazily upward, trailing into a sky so pale it looks like spilled milk. Your bones are sore, but not from work. From fun, which is a very different kind of ache. Less dull, more satisfying. But today, there's no feast, no pie, no eel marriage stories. Today, it's back to the rhythm. You pull on your tunic, rub the sleep from your eyes, and begin the morning chores in silence. The children are slower to rise. Even the goats look groggy. You step outside into dew-soaked grass and take a long, slow breath. The air is crisp and smells like ash, wet earth, and something sweet. Probably whatever Marjorie's making. She's always 3 steps ahead of the next meal. As you head to the field, you pass a neighbor who's already whispering about blight. "Spotted some spots," he says gravely, as if plants getting sick is somehow a personal betrayal. You nod seriously. You'll check yours later. But first, you have something else in mind. A quiet word with the saints. You stop at the edge of the lane where the little shrine sits. Nothing fancy, just a wooden box on a post, roofed like a tiny house and filled with dried flowers, a painted figure of Saint Isidore, and the scent of wax and weather. You light a stub of a candle, whisper a quick prayer for your rye to rise, your goat to stay inside the pen, and your back to hold out through next week. You're not a monk. You don't pretend to understand theology the way the priest does. But you know that asking nicely never hurts, and St. Isidore is your go-to. Patron of farmers, patron of muddy boots and stubbed toes and tools, held together by twine and hope. Historians still argue about how deeply embedded saints were in the everyday practices of rural medieval people. Some say it was performative, a way to blend religion into social expectation. Others believe deeply that saints were woven into every part of the day. Every seed sown, every cough soothed, Every dropped bucket apologized for with a whispered, "Sorry, St. Jude." You're in the second camp, especially when your hoe keeps disappearing mysteriously. Saints, or possibly mischievous neighbors. Back in your field, the earth is soft from recent rain, and it squelches underfoot like it's considering a career in quicksand. You kneel by a row of seedlings and start your inspection. They're upright, more or less. One is leaning to the left like it had a long night. You straighten it gently. Nearby, your youngest has joined you, digging with a stick, pretending to find treasure. You let them believe it's gold, though you know it's just a rock shaped like a bean. Imagination is one of the few things that doesn't cost a tithe. After the inspection comes the dreaded task: removing bramble. A patch has sprouted near the far edge of your plot, as thorny as a landlord and twice as clingy. You approach with gloves, determination, and a healthy respect for how much blood a plant can draw. Halfway through cutting it back, you pause. Something glints in the dirt. A coin, not silver. Just copper. Worn, but clearly a coin. Probably dropped years ago by someone with butterfingers and bad luck. You tuck it into your pouch and smile. A small gift. Or maybe payment from Saint Isidore himself. The sun climbs. Not too hot yet, but warm enough to start sweating through your sleeves. You remove your outer tunic and hang it on the fence post. The chickens come to investigate, pecking it suspiciously. One gets tangled in the sleeve and panics, flapping in a frenzy until it frees itself and wanders off, pretending it meant to do that. You pretend not to notice. By midday, you've worked your way through the bramble, replanted a row of beets, and chased off 2 crows, who thought the scarecrow was more decorative than functional. You eat lunch with your family near the field. Cold barley porridge, a bit of cheese, and half a boiled egg, split 5 ways. It's enough. Afterward, you sit back in the grass, chewing on a blade of wheat, listening to your partner tell a story about someone's cousin who once traded a sheep for a flute and then charmed a bear. You've heard this one before, but the ending always changes. Sometimes the bear dances. Sometimes it steals the flute. Today, it opens a bakery. You laugh anyway. The day continues with smaller tasks. Tying new trellises, checking the rain barrels, patching a cloak that tore near the collar. All while humming quietly, thinking not of war or politics or saints, but of bread. And maybe that found coin. What could you trade it for? You ask around. Marjorie suggests a bit of wax. The blacksmith's wife offers dried cherries. The priest suggests confession. You decide to wait. In the late afternoon, your neighbor comes by with a blister on his palm. He was tilling too long with a cracked handle. You boil some water, grind a bit of comfrey root, and help him wrap it. He winces. You tell a joke. It doesn't help the pain, but it softens the moment. The rest of the day passes in that gentle, aching way where time loses its shape. You're busy but not rushed. You're tired but not broken. As the sun begins to dip again, casting golden light over everything, yes, even the manure pile, you take a moment to sit alone by the well. You hold the coin in your hand, rubbing your thumb over its worn ridges. It's not treasure, but it's something rare. A moment of luck in a world that doesn't always offer many. You close your eyes. Just for a second. Not asleep. Not quite. Just letting the day rest gently in your chest. Tomorrow, the tools will be waiting. So will the saints. So will the brambles. But for now, there's peace. You open your eyes as the breeze picks up. Cooler now, carrying with it the scent of damp wood, cracked leather, and whatever your neighbor is burning that probably isn't entirely legal or advisable. The sky is slipping into its twilight clothes again. Soft purples, hints of gold, and that silvery gray that seems to hum if you listen long enough. Evening is creeping in, and with it comes the last round of chores, the quiet ones. The ones no one talks about, but everyone does, every day, forever. You trudge back toward your home, boots squelching through the lane. There's laughter echoing from the blacksmith's place. He's trying to get his twins to bed, and they've decided tonight is a no. Someone's goat is bleeding, but not your goat. Yours is curled up beside the fence, finally asleep. A small victory. Inside your home, the fire is still alive, fed earlier by your eldest. They're learning. The kindling was placed just right, and the coals look like embers tucked under a wool blanket. The room glows with that flickering warmth that makes everything, walls, people, problems, look softer around the edges. It's time to prepare for bed, but not before the last bit of housework. Your partner is folding a blanket made from so many patches you can barely remember what the original color was. You're helping gather the day's odds and ends. Tools, bits of thread, a wayward spoon, one of the children's makeshift dolls that's lost half an arm in a dramatic accident involving soup. The cottage is one room, just one. No privacy, no doors. A single space for everything. Sleep, eat, mend, love, scold, laugh, worry. You've never known anything else. And yet, somehow, it works. You check the door, wedge the latch, and shove a basket against it. Not because you expect danger, but because it gives you peace of mind. Your partner hangs the cooking pot on its hook. The children roll out their mats and begin the nightly argument over who's breathing too loudly. The youngest wins by pretending to snore like a bear. You sit for a moment by the hearth, toes pointed toward the fire, holding a cup of thin, warm ale. It's not for flavor. It's to calm the nerves and settle the belly. It works well enough. Your body is stiff. Your knees creak. Your hands look older than they should. But in the dim light, with your family close and the wind gently knocking at the shutters, none of that matters. One of the children asks for a story. You hesitate, then start telling the old tale about the knight who rode into town on a goat, challenged the baker to a duel, and accidentally invented gingerbread. They laugh. You add a new twist. This time, the goat wins. Historians still debate whether storytelling in peasant homes was frequent, structured, or mostly improvisation. You're not a historian. You're a tired farmer making things up because the story helps them sleep. And maybe helps you too. The room settles. Your partner lies down beside the youngest, humming a lullaby passed down through so many mouths it's more melody than lyrics now. The kind that stays in your bones, even if you forget the words. You stretch out on the mat closest to the hearth. It's not soft, but it's familiar. The dog curls at your feet, warm and slightly too damp. The fire crackles low, casting shadows that flicker across the beams. And then comes the stillness. The quiet that only comes after the work, after the laughter, after the cups are emptied and the cloaks hung. Outside, the village is asleep. No carts roll, no goats escape, no monks arrive with scrolls. Just the whisper of wind, the breath of the earth settling under the weight of its own day. You listen to the snores of your family, each one distinct, oddly musical. Someone murmurs in their sleep. The dog kicks once. The fire sighs. You think briefly about tomorrow, the weather, the rye, the stew. Then you decide not to think about it at all. Instead, you focus on the sound of the beams creaking above you, the faint rustle of straw and the rhythm of sleep, moving through the room like a soft tide. This is life. Not perfect, not easy, but yours. You close your eyes and drift. The night deepens, curling close around your cottage like a thick woolen blanket. You're asleep for a while, or at least resting in that middle place between thought and dream, when a creak on the roof pulls you briefly toward waking. Not a threat. Just the beams adjusting. Or maybe a cat. Maybe the wind. You don't check. Your body makes a firm argument for staying horizontal. Still, in these final moments before the next day begins to whisper its first breath, your mind drifts, not fully dreaming, not fully waking. You lie in the soft dark, eyes closed, breathing slow as the familiar sounds of nighttime return. The children have stilled. The fire is more ash than flame now, casting only a faint, reddish hue. The dog sighs in its sleep, paws twitching with the memory of some epic chase across a field it never left. You lie there surrounded by the slow rhythm of your world. The room smells of smoke and wool, a trace of bread crust left near the hearth, and the lavender your partner tucked into a pouch beneath the pillow weeks ago. You'd nearly forgotten it. A mouse scurries somewhere behind the wall, a sound so ordinary it barely registers. You know every beam, every board, every echo of this space. This is the theater of your life. One stage, one cast, endlessly rerunning acts of work, love, irritation, and rest. Some part of you is still working. Still listing tomorrow's chores. You try to quiet it. Just for tonight. In the hush, your thoughts settle on a dream. A wish, maybe. You imagine what it would be like to walk into a field and find it already tilled. To have someone else chase the goat. To find a pie waiting with your name on it, and no questions about who made it. You smile just faintly. You know better. But still, it's a nice picture. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly ever had peace, or just the brief illusion of it between toil. Whether joy was rare or simply quiet. You don't need a book to answer. You live the truth every day. It's there in the smallest things. A mended sleeve, a full jug, a clean egg. In the morning, you'll rise again. You'll strike flint to fire, chase chickens, dig trenches, whisper to the soil. You'll scratch your head over odd taxes, tell stories that don't end properly, and sew buttons with crooked thread. But tonight belongs to stillness. And here in that pause between yesterday and tomorrow, you rest in the knowledge that for all its hardship, this life is deeply, stubbornly yours. The night stretches quietly now, long and deep, as your breath slows in time with the rhythm of the village asleep around you. The fire is little more than a glow beneath the ash, warm enough to hold back the chill, dim enough to let your eyes slip into darkness. You listen to the quiet hum of night, the faint rustle of straw as someone turns in their sleep, the soft whistle of wind brushing past the shutters, the even breathing of those nearby. These are the sounds of safety, of continuity, of knowing that everything you need is within arm's reach. Warmth, rest, and the hope that tomorrow brings something kind. Outside, the stars are quiet witnesses above the thatched rooftops. They've seen it all, every harvest, every snowfall, every cracked bucket, and every moment of laughter shared over burnt stew and barley bread. You curl a little deeper under your blanket, letting the tension melt from your limbs, your shoulders softening, your hands finally still. Nothing is expected of you now. The day has spent itself. The tools are tucked away. The oxen are sleeping. So are the worries. You can drift now gently like a leaf on the surface of a slow river. Let the images of fields, flickering firelight, and the soothing weight of honest work cradle you as sleep takes over. You are home. You are safe. And tomorrow the earth will wait for you, but tonight you sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.